Hey guys, Angus here with another Airsoft video review for you guys today. Today we're going to be taking a look at the M4 currently set in front of the camera, and that gun, in case you can't tell by the title down below, is the G&G Armament FireHawk CQB M4 Airsoft AEG. Now you guys know me, not necessarily a huge fan of the M4, however I thought this one looked rather unique and interesting, and I thought why not make some videos of it. Now if you're interested in picking this gun up, there'll be a link down below in the description to airsoftstation.com where you can purchase it for about $190. And with that being said, what are we waiting for? Let's go ahead and hop straight into this video. As always, let's start off the review by going over the gun's packaging. As you can see, this is the box your G&G FireHawk will come in. Very flashy, and when you open it up, you will reveal your AEG held rather nicely and tightly inside a plastic mold. Inside the box, you'll have a little bit of paperwork, including a rather detailed little instruction manual, a small G&G catalog, as well as a bit of paperwork on your warranty. Then you'll have a front sight post adjustment tool, a small bag of 1,000 G&G .2 gram BBs, a dejamming rod, and of course your G&G FireHawk M4 Airsoft gun as well as its magazine. Now out of the box, jumping straight into the review here, immediate thing that attracted me to this weapon, as I already stated, was its appearance. It looks unique. It's not like your typical CQB M4. I was impressed by how it looked, and that's why I was interested in picking it up, and I could especially imagine this gun looking intimidating when you take advantage of the customization options all over the gun, as we'll talk about a little bit later in the video. Now hopping directly into external construction of this gun, it is a G&G Sportline Airsoft AEG, meaning that the majority of the weapon is going to be constructed of a higher quality plastic. Those plastic components include your upper and lower receiver, your top rail, as well as your RAS up in the front of the gun here. Your magazine is constructed of plastic, as is your pistol grip and the stock of your weapon. Now that being said, there are some metal pieces on this gun, including the buffer tube of the stock, the charging handle, your iron sights, this large orange tip flash hider up front, as well as some of your extremities such as your fire selector switch, your bolt release, etc. So you do get a decent amount of metal on here. However, the majority of the weapon is indeed constructed of plastic, which not necessarily a bad thing, especially in CQB where it does keep the weight down. It is overall very sturdy and built well, typical of any G&G sport line. I've always had good experience with them and actually own one myself. So overall the externals are pretty solid. There are a couple minor trademarks which we'll zoom in on for you now. Your markings are located on the left side of the gun's lower receiver and are simply painted on, so I would expect them to fade over time. There really aren't anything special, just this large one up front talking about G&G Combat Machine, as well as this one in the rear stating Made in Taiwan. So really nothing special, but they do add a little bit of pop to the side of your AEG. Now when talking about internals, you guys know me, I'm no huge Airsoft internal expert, but I can tell you, since this is an M4 gun, it does have a metal version 2 gearbox inside of it. I've always had good experience with G&G. I believe they're a higher end, even in their more affordable versions, such as this gun here. The internals tend to be pretty good, and if you watched our performance test, you'll see that they did perform well as well. So overall, internals on this weapon, pretty darn good, especially G&G quality, and the externals, solid, sturdy, and lightweight to boot. Now past the externals and internals, it's time to get into some of the features of this AEG, and in my opinion, as some of you might know, on an electric gun, nothing more important than battery space. And in this case, I actually do really like the battery compartment on this gun. The battery is stored inside the weapon's stock, or more so the buffer tube, but in order to access the compartment, the first thing you want to do is extend your stock outward like so. And then in order to remove the stock itself, you do that. What you actually want to do is push down on this sort of pin here, underneath where you actually push to adjust your stock. When you pull down the stock, and at that point the stock will simply slide off like so, revealing your hollow buffer tube as well as the small type battery connector that is inside of it. Now this buffer tube is obviously meant to house slimmer batteries. I definitely recommend a nice 7.4 volt LiPo that would be slim and easy to fit in there. You could maybe fit a smaller brick type battery, but looking at it right now it looks a little tight. What I actually found, let's say you don't have a LiPo that fits quite well, would be a 9.6 volt stick type battery. This fits in there rather easily. The only real con to it being in there is obviously, as you can see, it sticks out quite a bit, and you can attach your stock. However, you cannot shorten the stock at all. It's out at its longest position with the stick type battery, but personally I think that's the most comfortable shooting position. Overall, it's a pretty easy compartment to access, and like I said, a slim LiPo would really get the job done well. You could definitely change this in the field simply by popping the stock off and then putting it back on very simply. So overall, I do like the battery compartment on this gun. Now, while we're talking about the stock being an important part in this gun's battery compartment, we might as well mention the fact that it is indeed adjustable to 6 different positions. It's a very simple stock to adjust, typical of really any other ones you guys have probably experienced when you're airsoft games. You'd simply push in on this lever here, and you can extend it from its shortest position to its longest position shown here, or any of the 4 other positions in between, whichever is most comfortable to you. Overall, this is a very practical thing to have in a CQB style gun, because let's say you suddenly go from a longer range situation indoors to a shorter one, you can adjust the size of your weapon with an adjustable stock to fit your certain needs of the moment. Zooming in a little bit on the stock itself, you'll also notice that there are some stamped on markings here as well, made in Taiwan as well as G&G Armament, but that's not the coolest part about the stock. See this small little button here? Push it in, and you can actually pop this portion of the stock out like so. What that's good for is little storage space. If you wanted to store maybe some cigarettes in there if you're a smoker, or an Allen key for something with your gun, hey, it's cool and that's innovative and interesting that they did that. While we're zooming in on things, we might as well talk about this gun's fire selector switch, which isn't ambidextrous and located only on the left side of the gun. It's your standard M4 style selector with the 3 settings: safe, semi, and full auto. Overall, it's a good quality selector switch, requires a little bit of force to move, which is good, so you really won't have to worry about this thing slipping in between settings. Overall, a basic M4 selector switch. Moving on to iron sights, the FireHawk's iron sights are flip up. When they're flipped down, obviously they look like this. If you were to give them a quick push on their buttons and flip them up, this is what they would then look like. Let's go ahead and zoom in on them. Here we're looking at your rear sight, which is indeed adjustable. It does have 2 apertures, the open hole one showing now, but if you were to flip that down, you do also have a pinhole aperture. Obviously this sight is adjustable for windage simply by turning this small little dial located on the right side of the sight. This sight is obviously meant to line up with your front sight, which consists pretty basically of an adjustable sight post. Personally though, I really don't much care for the iron sights that come stock on this Airsoft AEG. Don't get me wrong, they're very accurate to the gun itself, however I find them kind of low and hard to aim down even when the stock is extended all the way to its fullest position. Luckily though, my complaints really aren't anything that's permanent about the AEG itself, because these iron sights are indeed removable, and you do obviously have a rather long top rail up top there for you to go ahead and mount any sort of optic. I could definitely see you customizing this AEG with a nice holographic sight or something suited for CQB, so that top rail already allows for customization, something that is continued via the weapon's railed front handguard up front here. Sure, it's a very small amount of RAS and therefore a little bit smaller as far as customization options go. However, you do still get 2 side rails, a continuation of your top rail, as well as the bottom 20mm rail there for you to go ahead and add some customization to your gun itself. I could definitely see this thing decked out with a flashlight and a laser on the side rails there, as well as there's not too much room for a grenade launcher, but a nice foregrip on the front to make holding this weapon a little bit more steady would look nice. So overall customization, my book, it's always a plus no matter how small the rail is. Now with the G&G FireHawk, you do indeed get a high capacity M4 style airsoft magazine. In order to eject it from the gun, you want to push in on the mag release located on the right side of the weapon. At that point, the magazine will fall out, so be prepared to catch it. As far as your mag goes, the FireHawk's magazine, besides looking very nice and eye-pleasing, is also one that feeds pretty darn well. It functions just like your standard high-capacity M4 magazine. You'd wind it down below via the gear, and you would obviously load it up top through the trapdoor where the BBs would feed through right next to it there. Overall, no feeding issues with this magazine really at all. I did have to wind it quite a bit though, so personally I'm a big fan of mid caps as opposed to having to deal with the high caps as all. But the main thing that I like about the mag is it certainly does look unique, just like the gun itself. You've got G&G Armament engravings all over the magazine itself, and on the opposite side you have the repeated image, except for in this case it reads made in Taiwan as opposed to G&G. Overall, a unique looking magazine that feeds just fine. Now once you've loaded up your magazine or are done looking at its unique looks, you'd go ahead and put it back into your weapon like so, with the lip of the magazine facing forward. You'd simply lock it in, hear that nice clack letting you know it is secured inside the gun, and at that point you're ready to go. Something nice to note about this G&G M4 is the fact that it is compatible with M4 magazines, which are pretty much everywhere on your airsoft fields, so chances are if you run out, there'll be a friend out there with one on them. So overall, mag compatibility is huge on an M4 like this. Now obviously the FireHawk's charging handle does have a function. If you were to pull it back, your dust cover would flip down and You will reveal your gun's hop-up unit, which can be adjusted via that large green gear shown there. If you turn it towards the front of the gun, you'll add hop, turn it back towards the shooter, and you're going to reduce hop. Overall, I found this hop-up unit to be pretty effective, as you might have noticed in our shooting test video, and I really didn't have any feeding issues whatsoever with the gun. Everything fed well, and the hop-up gear is large enough that, say you're playing in the winter with big gloves, you can adjust it pretty easily. It's nothing tight or hard to break in. It was a simple, nice hop-up unit. Alright, and with that last little bit about the gun's hop-up there, we can go ahead and hop into the final conclusion of this video review. Overall, I really did enjoy getting to take a look at the G&G FireHawk here, but before we start talking my final thoughts, let me just explain that I'm reviewing this as an airsoft player, not as a reviewer sitting around at a table nitpicking each little screw. I'm concerned with, is this weapon going to perform in a CQB game well, or is it something that isn't going to pass that test for the airsoft player who just wants to get out there? Overall, I did find this AEG to pass my test rather well. In the performance test portion of the video set that we did on this gun, we saw a very consistent CQB FPS of around 330, and accuracy was excellent at under 100 feet, perfect CQB range in my opinion. Taking a look at the features that we examined here in the review, overall, I think everything was pretty pleasing. The battery compartment is easy to access, even in a tight CQB, high-paced game, you could probably do it. The adjustable stock is very practical for CQB-style games where you might need to shorten your weapon at a moment's notice. The iron sights, I didn't really care for them too much personally, a little too low for me, but the top rail on top of the weapon here allows for immediate customization and the placement of a nice sight, so that certainly is nice. The small amount of RAS on the handguard there, also customization options, which I really do enjoy. The magazine fed well, just like any other high cap. I had to constantly wind it as I was sending off bursts on full auto, so I might switch to the mid caps, but this magazine certainly does look unique, just like the rest of the AEG, which is certainly something that originally turned me on to being interested in reviewing this gun. Selector switch, standard, works absolutely fine, and as far as the hop-up goes, it's a pretty effective little unit and easy to adjust as well. We didn't really need to break it in or anything like that. So overall, this gun certainly did pass my test as a CQB ready gun right out of the box. It's an interesting little AEG. I'm not a huge fan of the M4, but a unique looking one like this certainly does pass my test, especially with that nice little hidden compartment in the stock on the back here. Overall, a nice gun. Did enjoy it. I would recommend it for someone looking for a CQB style M4 or even a small gun they want to take out in woodland play. With that being said, guys, thanks for watching. Please subscribe.